Hello, Star Wars fans. Today we're going to look at all the big reveals from the finale of The Acolyte. I'll talk about the things I liked about the season and the things that could be improved for the future, as well as whether I want a season 2 or not. And in fact, I want to know your thoughts. You know I read and respond to all the comments. So let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a July contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check that out in case you're interested. Okay, so right off the bat, I need to address a timeline placement discussion from the last breakdown. I mentioned how the Great Hyperspace Disaster happens in 232 BBY. That's a canon event. We know the exact year it occurred. Then we also learned that 100 years ago, the planet was cataloged as lifeless because of, well, that same hyperspace disaster. Yet the planet Brendock is thriving. So we have our answer, right? 100 years after 232 BBY, we can place it definitively in 132 BBY. Awesome. Maybe not. So the Shockwave had a good point. Dude, it was a flashback episode that happened 16 years before present day. That would put present day in 116 BBY. Oof. Very good point. Akakak also said, do we really know it was 100 even years? I mean, she could have been rounding up or rounding down. And in fact, Beaker709 took it even further, did some really good math. You can read that if you want to, but it's fantastic analysis. Bottom line is, we don't know definitively when this thing is happening in the present day. Drat. Anyway, I'm going to stick with 132 BBY just to have something on paper, but I'm no longer convinced it's a definitive date. We're going to have to wait for the timeline book to tell us for sure when we get the next update. Okay, anyway, on to the episode, which was awesome. So we start right where we left off with Osha with the helmet on her head, and Qimir is quite proud of himself. Look at that little smirk. Well, at least he's happy until this happens. Osha starts gasping, breathing heavily. He rushes across the room, crying Osha, trying to stop her, and instead, he's the one that stopped. He can't move. In fact, we see the same black and white type situation as we saw when the witches took over Torben. Notice he's frozen, and he's saying no, but then we also see that his eyes are actually glazed over black. So the question is, how is this happening? I mean, obviously Osha's doing it, but how is she doing it? Did she just inherit the witch's powers even though she didn't go through the ascension? And is she even aware she's doing it? Or is this the dark side making it happen? Very interesting. I just don't know. Let me know your thoughts on that. But Qimir, through sheer willpower, rips that thing off her head and breaks her out of what turns out to be a force vision, I believe. Because she says, Mae, I saw Mae. She had her hand outstretched. She was killing Sol. Now, of course, as it turns out, it's going to be Osha with the hand outstretched, killing Sol. So really, she saw a vision of something she was going to do. But then again, Osha and Mae are essentially the same person, as we learned. They were just split into two. So this type of a force vision, where have we seen that before? Well, at least, I mean, many places really, but Phantom Menace most famously. When Anakin had a vision he was so worried might happen that he accidentally made it happen by his actions. Crazy. So yeah, I love this whole Force vision, how they're tying all these things together from the prequel series, prequel movies rather, and of course the Acolyte series. Very, very cool. All right, so do we finally get our answer to this big question? So Osha says she had a saber in her hand, but she didn't use it, to which Qimir seems quite happy. He says, this is the future you saw? She can kill with no weapon. Okay, to everybody who guessed that maybe the answer was a force choke, I think you got it right. They don't say it 100%, but Qimir in his mind is saying, yeah, if you kill somebody with a force choke, you're doing it without a weapon. So why is that so important? Well, obviously a force choke is using the dark side. So the test, I think, for Mae was, can you fully channel the dark side? And of course, Mae didn't, because Mae never figured out what she needed to do. But we're going to see that Osha does. She passes the test and uses the dark side. Okay, so then we have, we'll call it an unwelcome team up, because Qimir has the ship, but Osha knows where Mae is. So yeah, they're going to have to hang out together. So they take off, and as they take off, we get our huge reveal for the episode. A creepy hand going around the side of the cave there. And yeah, we get our big reveal. Plagueis, baby. Plagueis all day long. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. It's so cool to see him in live action. And of course, one of the most famous novels about him was Darth Plagueis. But I found this entry on Wikipedia very interesting, and it's maybe one more case where people get mad that they feel the lore is being changed. So I just want to bring this up. So in the novel Darth Plagueis, his birthday works perfectly. The birth date suggested is 170 BBY or earlier. That would work with a 132 BBY. However, in the novel The Tenebrous Way, Plagueis' birth date would be around 147 BBY. So I've already heard some people saying, well, that would make him 15. He can't be 15. And you're right, that dude ain't 15. But here's the key. Even the legends have two different dates for his birth. So that's one thing I'm really enjoying about the Acolyte is it's taking information from the legends material, in this case, seemingly the Darth Plagueis novel, and letting us know what is the correct answer, because it would have to be a birth date of 170 BBY or earlier. But most importantly is this. We got Plagueis, baby. We got Plagueis. I absolutely love it. All right, so then we also seem to learn about a new trick Qimir has, because Osha is saying getting in this elevator operational is the only way in, and she has her back turned to him, and then he says, notice they're still calling him the stranger, he says, are you sure it's the only way in? She turns, and he's gone. So what happened? Did he fade to mist like the witches? I don't think so, because I think she would have seen that, the after effects of the mist. Instead, was he using force projection, maybe? I'm curious. They didn't really reveal this. I guess if we get a season 2, we might know more. But let me know your thoughts. What exactly did he do here? But now, let's leave them there because they're on Brendock. Now, let's go and find out what Sol is up to and Mae. So, Sol is revealing what I think is a very key motivation for his actions. He says there's a Vergence on the planet, and now that you and Osha are both alive, I can prove it. So we're going to see that proving a Vergence is very, very important to him. And then Mae asks a great question. Well, if killing my mom was an accident, why didn't you tell Osha? Very good question. And then now we jump into the blame game. These two are like a married couple arguing. She says, why did you blame it on me? And he's like, well, you started the fire. You locked everyone in. And she's like, but the Jedi invaded our home. Everyone in there died because of the 4 of you. And he says, well, it was right for us to intervene. Oh my goodness, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Here's the real key. What this series has shown is that sometimes there's no clear-cut answer to things. 2 things can be true at once. Number 1, Mae started the fire. Mae caused all kinds of destruction. But in the end of the day, Sol killed Anastasia. I mean, yeah, he thought that Mae or Osha was in danger, and he thought he was doing the right thing, but he still killed her in cold blood and would probably be found guilty in a court of law for doing so. Okay, at the same time, Osha was being forced into a ceremony that she didn't want to do. She wanted to be a Jedi instead. That's bad. Killing the witches, though, was very bad. So the Jedi made a good decision, rescuing Osha from that ceremony, and a bad decision. It resulted in all the witches dying. Here's the key. Remember, this whole season has been about yin and yang. And there's an important distinction. It's not just good versus bad. Look at the definition. The yin and yang symbol shows a balance between 2 opposites with a portion of the opposite element in each section. You see what I mean? There is no good, there is no evil. Every good act has some evil to it, and every evil act has some good to it. So I think that's what they're trying to say with this is the reason everybody keeps arguing about who was right, who was wrong. Are the witches good, are the witches bad? Are the Jedi good, are the Jedi bad? Neither is all bad, and neither is all good. I think that's cool. Anyway, Sol really, really wants Mae to forgive him. He says, my biggest regret is I wasn't able to save you both. And then he makes this fatal mistake. Every time he does this, he starts to drop some key info and something bad happens. He says, you and Osha are not twin sisters. You're not even sisters. You're, boom, and he gets shocked because she broke out of her restraints and she shocks him. Sol, you got to figure out by now, every time you start to drop some key info, something bad's going to happen to you. Every single time. So Mae takes off, dropping a little see you in hell line Jedi, which is kind of funny. Where have we heard this before? Sure reminded me of Empire Strikes Back when they said your tauntaun will freeze before you reach the first marker. And Han says, then I'll see you in hell. Yeah! I love it. Han Solo, baby. He's awesome. All right, so now we see where the money went for this series. This was some incredible special effects. We get a very cool space chase. I loved this when they went into the debris here. That is so cool looking. As Mae's trying to escape, and then we see Sol and his ship up above there trying to chase after her. It was just really cool. Now, I'm not real sure what Sol was trying to do here, though. I mean, at first I thought, oh, he's trying to get her in a tractor beam, but that ain't no tractor beam. But I don't think he was trying to kill her either, right? He already said he wants to prove a Vergence, and he can't do that without Mae. So I think he was just probably going to shoot and maybe cripple her ship, but not destroy it. But Basil didn't sense that. Basil thought he was doing something bad and rips the controls out. I don't know what to think about Basil, man. He shows up and causes trouble every time. But anyway, now, luckily, no one died from this. Time for a crash landing onto the planet. And in fact, Sol decides once he lands to turn on his transceiver so the Jedi can find him. So that's important. Then he heads in to revisit a tragic location from the past. Yes, it is indeed that catwalk where now, in hindsight, he knows he should have grabbed the two of them, Osha and Mae, instead of trying to hold up the catwalk because he didn't have the strength to do that. And so it's just kind of, his failure facing him head on. So very cool. Then as soon as he turns, though, up jumps Mae, his failure. In fact, it's just kind of poetic, right? Because she fell last time, and this time she jumps up to that platform. Crazy. All right, so now the last players we need to get on to Brendock, and that is Vernestra and her team. But before that, she has a problem to deal with. So Mogg says, Master Vernestra, Senator Rancourt's here to see you. So where have we heard that name before? Well, earlier, I think it was episode 6, we learned that Senator Rancourt continues to gain support because my colleagues in the expansion region will vote in favor of an external review of the order. So clearly Rancourt does not like the Jedi. But this dude's saying, hey, shouldn't be a problem. Jedi are always transparent with the Senate. Well, maybe not so much, right? But now we finally meet this Rancourt. And honestly, I'd kind of enjoyed if we had met him earlier, because this really created some major tension. But nonetheless, he was great when he finally showed up. So he says, you think my campaign for an external review of the Jedi is a personal vendetta? Well, I think the Jedi are a massive system of unchecked power, posing as a religion. Interesting. Right? Keep that in mind. Posing as a religion, a delusional cult that claims to control the uncontrollable. So basically, he doesn't understand the Jedi, certainly doesn't agree with them. So what is he doing? He's calling their religion a cult. Well, what did the Jedi do with the witches? They called them a cult. So again, this series is really pushing us mentally to think about others and how we view them. Just because we don't understand someone doesn't make them a cult. If we don't understand their religion, their faith, they're not a cult. But it's so easy to do that. In fact, we're going to see that Vernestra later calls the witches a cult. But here he is calling the Jedi a cult. Fascinating, right? So she says, we don't control the Force. And Rancourt says, no, not the Force. It's your emotions. So he's talking about the fact that they pretend like they have their emotions under control. They push their emotions aside. And don't we find that so often in religion? Not any religion in particular, every religion. It's an honorable thing, in fact, to push aside your desires, your instincts. But sometimes when you push aside natural, normal, healthy instincts, it can cause bad things to happen. As he explains, he says you project an image of goodness and restraint, in other words, restraint by pushing aside your emotions, but it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps. And how many times have we seen that? Where someone, it looks like they're doing such a good job with their faith, but they're pushing aside natural emotions, and instead they snap instead of doing good things. And in fact, he goes on to say, and when, not if, that happens, who will be strong enough to stop him? And I can't help but think, but the him there is to make us think of this guy, who will be strong enough to stop him when he snaps, is yet another way that the Acolyte has tied in beautifully with the prequel trilogy. I love it. Very, very cool. So yeah, this guy ain't playing around. He then says, I've reported your lack of transparency to Chancellor Drellick, who we will meet later. And then he says facetiously, may the Force be with you. Ouch. So Vernestra realizes there are some real problems. So she makes a communique to someone, we'll learn who later, and says, I know he is, I'm assuming busy, but I need to get a message to him. And then this is interesting. If you go back and listen to the episode, the man over the intercom sounds very, very familiar. He says, this is highly unorthodox, but I'll see what I can do. They don't identify him, but I'm telling you, that dude sounds just like Palpatine. I know it's not. Palpatine would be a child at this point. I just think they got the actor to do the line, but it was an interesting choice. Go back and listen to it. Tell me it does not sound like Palpatine. Anyway, now she's heading off to find Sol. Gather as many knights as you can without raising alarm. So now everybody is together on the planet. We have Mae and Sol, Qimir and Osha, and finally Vernestra and her team, all on Brendok. So now it's time for everybody to collide. First, we get Qimir and Sol in what I thought was a spectacular fight. I loved it. The wire work was fantastic. Jumping around, they just floated through the air with ease. Qimir gets 2 lightsabers then, his little smaller one and the bigger one. We get this cool move by Sol. I loved this when Qimir launches both of his lightsabers at Sol and jumps at him, and Sol force pushes everybody back. That was so cool. So loved their fight. Meanwhile, we have a confrontation between Mae and Osha, finally trying to hash things out. Osha is explaining all the death, everything that happened here, all because you didn't want me to become a Jedi, which is interesting if you think about it. Really, where it all started is that Osha wanted to leave to be a Jedi and Mae wouldn't let her. That was an 8-year-old kid. We can't place all the blame on this on an 8-year-old kid. I'm not trying to do that. But I'm saying from Osha's standpoint, that was where this all stemmed. And we're going to see that that is an important resolution between the two of them at the end of this episode. So Mae, still trying to deny everything, says, I didn't do this. Well, you started a fire, Mae. But nope, she says, I didn't do this. Sol lied to you. He blamed me. Well, Osha's saying, no, Sol never blamed you. I failed. I could never learn to calm my negative emotions, my hatred of you, my grief over our mother. That's what led to me never becoming a Jedi. And I guess in the end, you got what you wanted. Okay, so we finally know why Osha ultimately failed. It was, we kind of had a hint at it, but it was her anger, her frustration, her hatred of Mae and everything that happened. And that's why she wasn't able to become a Jedi. And notice how she says, in the end, you got what you wanted. So then Mae drops the bomb. Sol killed our mother. He has lied to you. How could he teach you to control your negative emotions? You didn't fail. He did. Mae left out a little bit of context there. It's not like, Sol just marched right in there to kill Anasea. But still, that was the result. Anasea is dead at Sol's hands. Well, Osha didn't want to hear that, and they have a nice throwdown. Some pretty cool action. And man, I loved this cool transition from this kick to the sabers. That was really cool. Very well done. Very well done. All right, so then Vernestra now is flying overhead, and I love that Qimir says, oh, they're not here for me. They're not here for me. Wow. But Sol gets the upper hand, destroys his lightsaber, and is holding him at bay. However, out jumps Mae. Mae grabs the saber from Sol, and now she's the one holding it. Now, Qimir then says, strike him down, and your journey will be complete. Of course, wherever we heard that before, yeah, same thing the Emperor said. Once again, nice tie into all the different Star Wars lore. But Mae has a different plan. Mae chucks the saber down, and I really love this. We actually get to see the crystal inside. That is really cool. But Mae says, I want him to pay for his crimes. So here's Mae, who originally was killing Jedi, now realizing, no, the better answer is he needs to go before the Jedi and pay for his crimes. And here's Sol again saying, I did the right thing. Not realizing that yin and that yang, right? Every decision isn't 100% good or 100% bad. You did the right thing, but bad things occurred because of it. So now we get a key motivation for everything he's been doing. He says, you and Osha are the same person. I don't know how your mother did it, but it has something to do with a Vergence on this planet. She created life. I believe she used the Force to create you and Osha. Okay, we may have finally got our answer then. I wondered maybe was Plagueis helping in behind the scenes? Was Qimir helping behind the scenes? No, it seems the witches were just able to tap into the Vergence and create Mae and Osha. Why they ultimately created them as 2 instead of 1, I don't know that we know that answer. I don't know that they told us that. But regardless, they created life. The witches did it. And here's a big reason I don't think Qimir was involved, because look at him listening and going, well, that's interesting. This Vergence let you create life? And look at that look on his face. He's like, huh. As Sol says, do you have any idea what kind of power this is? Qamir's like, oh, I think I do. I think I do. So what I think they're implying is Qimir is going to ultimately explain to Plagueis, or maybe Plagueis has been watching all this from afar and is going to learn how they used the Vergence to create life. So yeah, I do think this ends up tying into the prequel trilogy and Plagueis' attempts to create life. So, which ultimately results in the Force pushing back, of course, and creating Anakin. All right, so I'm thinking, therefore, Qimir is not tied to the witches. I really thought this triangle thing that he did on Jecki was going to tie him in with the triangles we see from the witches. No, the fact that Qimir seems surprised to learn all of this means this is all new to him. So that's fascinating. I don't think, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I don't think there is any tie between Qimir and the witches. Wow. Did not see that coming. Anyway, so then Sol is explaining in the history of the galaxy, very few have been so powerful. And I think this is Sol admitting something that he's never said until now. He knew Anastasia was extremely powerful, and I think in his mind, even though he never said it, he considered her a threat. Because that leads, notice, Mae to saying, and you killed her. You killed our mother. Isn't that interesting? So again, I don't think Sol walked in wanting to kill Anastasia, but I do think his bias towards her and the fact that he thought she was too powerful might have led to his rash decision. Because notice, he finally comes clean and says, yes. And look at the sorrow in his face. I did. I mean, I think he realizes it was a mistake. He's tried to justify killing Anastasia, and now he's finally accepting, no, it was wrong. It was still wrong. Again, no decision is fully right, and no decision is fully wrong, but he's accepting the wrong of his decision. So Osha overhears that, and says, if it was the right thing to do, why didn't you tell the Jedi? So now he goes back to defending himself. Well, without Mae, there's no proof that you were created this way. He needed Mae. I thought I did what was best for you. That's true. Look at the pain in his face. He really did. But she doesn't want to hear it anymore. She's done. Stop talking, she says. And then he says, I did everything because and while the closed captioning doesn't show it, I think he started to say, love you. Now, not romantically. I think love you like a father and a daughter. But nonetheless, no. She says, stop talking. And she physically makes him stop talking, chokes him with the Force choke, which again is her fully turning to the dark side. And then finally Sol realizes, yeah, okay, I'm ready to die. I've accepted the mistake I made. And much like Torben and Kalnaka, and maybe to some extent Indara, they all were willing to die and just to end things once and for all. He says, it's okay. And sure enough, she kills him. But I got to ask the question, does this make Osha any better now than Sol? I mean, yeah, Sol killed Anastasia. That was a mistake. It was bad. Well, Osha, does killing Sol make you better? Does a revenge kill make you a better person? I don't think so. I don't think so. So again, there's just no black and white to this. Everything is a yin and a yang, where there's a little bit of dark and a little bit of good in everything. Anyway, it does look for now, though, that Osha is turning dark, because notice the cyber crystal bleeds red. And in fact, as the saber comes out, I love that. We see it turning from blue into red. To see that in live action is amazing. Again, this series did so much to take lore that we've only seen in either comics, animated, video games in this case, and now we're seeing it in live action. So cool. But right at this moment, Vernestra lands on the planet and senses a familiar presence. She says, you're alive? So clearly she's talking about Qimir, because Qimir shoves the helmet on so he can't sense her any longer. She thought he died. What on earth? What's going on between these two? We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But yeah, clearly these two have a past. So both Mae and Osha use that opportunity to take off. And now we finally figure out how Mae survived all those years ago. She says, we have to climb down there. And when I fell, I got sucked into this core tunnel. Well, there you go. It turns out no one saved her. She just got lucky. Wild. So they escape. They're heading back to the Bunta tree, and Vernestra enters the scene. And now she gets what clearly are Force echoes of the past and learns everything that happened. So this answers a question I've had for a long time. Was Vernestra aware of what happened 16 years ago? I don't think so. Because notice, she's listening to Mother Anastasia saying no, Kalnaka screaming at everyone, a Sol saying Kalnaka no. She didn't know any of this. Isn't that interesting? So here I thought Vernestra might have been part of this original cover-up. No, she wasn't. She's learning about it for the first time. And she's being watched by Qimir from above, who now is hidden thanks to his Cortosis helmet. And it really is a pretty emotional scene when she's leaning over Sol and just learning everything that happened. So, on the other hand, Basil, good old Basil, man, that guy turns up everywhere. He's on the hunt to find Osha and Mae. And they do meet at the Bunta tree. And then finally, the sisters come clean. They own up to their mistakes. Osha says, I'm sorry I didn't believe you. And finally, Mae says, I'm sorry I started the fire. That really made me happy because, I mean, she's taken no ownership at all for any of her actions. And finally, she says, I started the fire. I mean, that's only part of the equation, right? Everybody made mistakes, but Mae owned up for hers. That's great. Then the stranger suddenly shows up and says, hey, if I can find you, so can the Jedi. So yeah, Qimir saying basically, we got to do something. And explains, Osha, when they find out how powerful you are, because she is really powerful, she's now taken fully the dark side on, and she seems to have that witch's power to take over other people's consciousness. Crazy. And it's actually Mae that finishes the sentence and says, you will meet the same fate as our mother. So they're afraid that since the Jedi killed Anastasia, they would now kill Osha. So then I like this. This was cool. Mae says, what do you want, Osha? Because remember, the whole problem was that Mae would not let Osha do what she wanted to do. In other words, become a Jedi. So now she's letting her choose. Let my sister go, says Osha, and I will train with you. And then Mae says, you're going to do what you were meant to do. That's interesting, what you were meant to do, but I won't stop you this time. Okay, I got to ask the question. Is that an accurate statement, though? I mean, it's true. She's not going to stop her this time. But remember, the first time, Osha wanted to go and be a Jedi. But Mae wouldn't let her. Now Mae's letting her choose, and of course, she's going to be a Sith. Ugh. You know, it's just this yin and this yang coming back again. this duality. I mean, the very fact that Osha and Mae are wearing the other one's clothes. I mean, it's very clever. I do like how they've tied all this together. But I do have to wonder, is Osha in better shape or not? I mean, they've made it clear the Jedi aren't all good, but they aren't all bad. But I don't know that the Sith, is there really any good in the Sith? Let me know your thoughts on that. But I think Osha's making a mistake. Anyway, to take care of this problem, though, the stranger says, I can attempt to wipe her memory. And remember, Qimir had earlier talked about the memory wipe. How funny. He had joked about, don't do the memory wipe thing or whatever it is you guys do. Oh, he knows fully well what it is because he's going to do it now. And he does. And it's really kind of a sad scene where slowly as Mae's memory is going away and being taken from her, she can't even finish the little poem they would recite to each other. Wild. Then, sure enough, Qimir and Osha get away, and Mae's left standing there. Moog says, lay down your weapons and surrender. And poor Mae says, what did I do? Because, of course, her memory's been wiped. So Vernestra tries to fill her in on some of those things now that they're back on Coruscant. Your last memory is from when you were 8 years old. So she's been wiped all the way back to when she was 8. The man who killed your mother was a Jedi. He justified every selfish step with the love he had for your sister. There's that opposite, the yin and the yang, right? No decision is 100% wrong, and no decision is 100% right. Everything he did was selfish, but he did it out of love. Crazy, huh? He was a kind, brilliant, compassionate man, and he did a terrible thing. Man, it's just so cool how they tie all this together. So, yes, indeed, two things can be true at once. It was a noble thing for him to try to save Osha, but he did terrible things along the way, such as killing Anastasia. So let me know your thoughts, but I just think that this series is not trying to make anyone all evil or all good. It's forcing us to have these debates and to try to really process how do we feel about their actions. No black and no white. It's all gray. I love it. All right, so I guess you could argue this, though, is black and white because Vernestra puts all the blame on Sol. She says they discovered a Force cult of witches. There's that word cult again, right? Remember, Rayancourt was calling the Jedi a cult. Well, here's Vernestra calling the witches a cult. Oof. A conflict ensued. There were many casualties. Afterwards, the Jedi conspired to keep their actions secret, and a rogue Jedi named Sol killed his accomplices to maintain the cover story. Oh, so at the same time she's stabbing his back, we see her saying, I'm sorry, my friend. Oof. Then she says, while this is a terrible tragedy, it was the work of one flawed man. I believe he ended his own life. So yeah, at the same time she's stabbing him in the back, she gives him this respectful funeral. So yeah, no good, no evil, it's all gray. And most importantly, I do think we finally have the answer for how Ki-Adi-Mundi can say, impossible, the Sith have been extinct for a millennium. Everybody that knew about it is now dead or has done a cover-up. Very, very cool. So all the worries about this statement being no longer canon and no longer working, I think have been taken care of. Let me know your thoughts if you think they haven't, but I think it took care of it perfectly. So now, time to set up the next season. So Vernestra says to Mae, I need you to help me find someone, a pupil of mine, before he turned evil. So yeah, if we didn't have 100% confirmation, then we got it here. Qimir is indeed her former pupil. Because remember earlier, when Osha was talking to him, she says, it looks like someone stabbed you in the back. And he said, someone who threw me away. So interesting. Once again, they have different opinions of what happened. Vernestra says he turned evil. He says she threw me away. Your Jedi Master, remember, she asked, and he never answered, but now we know the answer. And in fact, I think the scars on his back that we thought were maybe from her lightsaber or her lightsaber whip, sure enough, yep, we have that answer. Then we get more set up for season 2 as Osha and Qimir are standing together. I still think it's a little creepy how he's basically seduced her, literally seduced her to the dark side. But nonetheless, they're standing together on what is still listed as an unknown planet, but I really think we know the name of this planet now. It is got to be Baldemnik. Remember, it's an ocean planet adorned with rocky tropical islands, which we see there. And then, really importantly, it has cortosis ore, which we obviously saw, and it's where Plagueis killed his master Tenebris. So, yeah, it's where Plagueis hangs out, and we saw him there. So, they didn't say it's Baldemnik, but I think it is. And then the biggest setup for season 2, oh my word, sorry to disturb you, Master, we need to talk. And sure enough, we see Yoda. So yeah, what exactly is she going to tell Yoda? And does that mean he's been part of this cover-up or not? You know, do they now make the Phantom Menace get questionable again? Or are they going to answer some bigger questions on why Yoda knew some things like the Rule of Two? Remember, Yoda knew the Rule of Two about the Sith. Why did he know that? So very interesting. I'll tell you what, I'm very interested in a season 2, but we'll talk more about that in a second. All right, so did we get our answers? These were the remaining questions from last episode's breakdown. So who is Qimir's master? Well, now we know it used to be Vernestra. The question, though, is what's his relationship with Plagueis, which we'll get to in a moment. And what's his history with the witches? I don't think he has one. That's crazy. Why is killing a Jedi without a weapon so important? We learned that the Force choke leads you to the dark side. Who saved Mae from the fall? Well, she got luckily sucked into a tube. It was no one saved her. What role does Vernestra play? No role other than the final cover-up. Crazy. Well, of course, she used to be Qimir's master. But yeah, I thought she was more involved. She was not. How were Mae and Osha created? Seems like it was solely by the witches. And why did the Jedi not know about the Sith and 32 BBY? I mean, they've covered it up for now perfectly. We just need to see what's going to happen with Yoda. So I'm going to get rid of every question other than, does Mother Coral survive? Because it certainly seems like she survived. And then I'm going to add questions for a season 2, right? Is Plagueis now working with Qimir or not? What's their relationship? What information does Vernestra share with Yoda? And what is exactly the name of the planet Qimir is hiding on? I think we know the answer, but I want them to say it 100%. So the last question to ask is, should we get a season 2? Well, I can answer that pretty emphatically. I say yes. I want to know your thoughts on it, but I definitely think we need a season 2. Now, a couple things I'd like them to improve. I think the writing could be a little crisper, and they could work on some of the pacing. Things either went too slow, or suddenly things were going so fast you couldn't follow it all. But honestly, I've seen those similar issues with Ahsoka Season 1 as well. So really, those are things they can improve across the board with some of the Star Wars series. But yeah, I really want a Season 2. I want to know the answer to these questions. I want to see Plagueis in action. Please, please, give us a Season 2. So there you go. That is my thoughts on the series so far. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for following along and watching the videos as I broke everything down. It's been great doing this and reading all your awesome comments. So please do let me know your thoughts. And don't forget, July contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. And there's that membership option in case you're interested. And finally, hey, love to have you join us on Discord. Here we are talking in a spoiler section about our feelings on the Acolyte. So 1,500 members across the globe are on the Discord, and we would love you to be part of these conversations. I will leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we will all eagerly await the next entry in the Star Wars saga.